Okay. Question that we have. Why it looks like Solomon at the end of his life is disobedient to God. Right? We saw that last week. At the end of his life, he is disobedient to God. In fact, he's been disobedient to God for a long time. Even at the very beginning of his reign, disobedient to God. He married Pharaoh's daughter. And then you read all the great things that he had. How would you like to have some of his money, some of his wisdom, some of his fame? I'm not saying all of it, just a little bit of it. And on the outward side, it looks like Solomon is doing really, really well. And then at the end of his life, I think he came back to the Lord because he wrote Proverbs and Song of Solomon and Ecclesiastes. So he says, God, I'm sorry. God says, it's okay. And oftentimes we think of God, well, I can do whatever I want. And when I ask for forgiveness, he does. That's his job, to forgive. It's my job to sin and his job to forgive. And I think if we look at 1 Kings 11, we will see that's not really true. So let's start looking at 1 Kings 11. And from 1 Kings 11 through 6, we see that Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely as David his father did. Verse 7 explains part of his evil ways. Solomon built a high place, and he did the same for all of his foreign wives who burned incense and offered sacrifices to their God. In verse 9, we see God's response. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, who had appeared to him twice. You have not kept my covenant. I will tear the kingdom away from you and give it to another one. Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father, I will not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Yet I will not tear the whole kingdom from him, but will give him one tribe for the sake of David, my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. So, okay, we say sin, not so bad. It's not going to hit me. It's going to hit my son. So the kingdom will be torn from him. There will be consequences in the future. Not so bad for me. Okay, if I rule over 12 tribes or 2 tribes, it's okay. Everybody can live with the money I have. You see what I'm saying? And we have a tendency to think that, don't we? Now let's look at what God does. Let's start reading in verse 14. Then the Lord raised up against Solomon an adversary, Hadad the Edomite, from the royal line of Edom. Did you notice who's responsible for the enemy? Did you see that in verse 14? The Lord raised up against Solomon an adversary. Verse 17, Hadad, still only a boy, fled to Egypt with some of the Edomite officials who had served his father. They set out from Midian and went to Paran, and then taking men from Paran with them, they went to Egypt, to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, who gave Hadad a house and a land and provided him with food. And Pharaoh was so pleased with Hadad that he gave him a sister of his own wife. So look what's happening. There's an enemy. And the enemy goes to Egypt. That was an ally of Solomon. Notice what happens. While he was in Egypt, Hadad heard that David rested with his fathers, and Joab, the commander of the army, was also dead. And Hadad said to Pharaoh, "Let me go that I may return to my own country." "What have you lacked here that you want to go back to your own country?" Pharaoh said. "Nothing, but do let me go." So we don't know exactly how this worked out between Solomon and Hadad, but he has an enemy. And this enemy is well connected with his friend, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And who raised up the enemy? It was God. Why would he do that? Do you remember what God said in the Davidic covenant? If you disobey, I will discipline you with, the word is actually, I will strike you. And I'm of men, with bands of men. I will use men against you. Solomon was disobedient, and God does what he says. Okay. Verse 23. And God raised up against Solomon another adversary, Rason, the son of Eliada, who fled from his master, the king of Zobah. And he gathered his men around him and became the leader of a band of rebels when David destroyed the forces of Zobah. And the rebels went to Damascus, where they settled and took control. And Rezah was Israel's adversary as long as Solomon lived, adding to the trouble caused by Hadad. So Rezon ruled in Aram and was hostile toward Israel. Now you say, well, it's okay. Hadad lives in Edom. Who wants to live in Edom? Do you know where Edom is? It's the southern part of Jordan. So if you go over down to the Dead Sea, and you go over to the eastern side of the Dead Sea, you're in Moab. And then you go about 70 kilometers south. Then you're in Edom. Who in the world wants to live there? That's like saying, I want to live in the Sahara Desert.
Petra.
Petra's there. Mm-hmm.
Ja.
It's like saying, I'll live in Saudi Arabia. Well, have you ever seen pictures of Saudi Arabia? Do you want to live there? It's hot. But there is one thing that Saudi Arabia has. What is it? Oil and natural gas. And with the price of oil today, I could live in Saudi Arabia, just have my own little oil well, pump out what, 200,000 barrels a day? That's enough to live on comfortably. And that's what we have to understand about Hadad. He lived in Edom, but he controlled the way of the king. And that was a main source of income for Solomon, because everybody who traveled on that way would have to pay toll. They would have to pay tax. And now it's no longer Solomon controlling it, but it's Hadad. And this is going to be a problem. Did you notice Rezon? He rules in Aram. Do you know where Aram is? Notice what it says in verse 24. The rebels went to Damascus and they settled and took control. So Aram is what we call Syria today. And Damascus is their main capital. It's their capital. Well, you say it's okay. They can be in the north and I'll be in the south. Well, did you know there's a main trade road that runs from Mesopotamia, from the Persian Gulf in Mesopotamia, all the way over to Egypt? And at Damascus, it splits into two roads. You have the Way of the King, that's in Transjordan, so in Jordan, uh, Moab, Edom. And you have the Way of the Sea, and that runs down from Damascus to the Sea of Galilee along the coast over to Egypt. And now Giessen is controlling that. They're going to attack Solomon in Transjordan. You say, where is Transjordan? Well, have you ever heard of the Golan Heights? That's where Transjordan is. And so these two are not just his political enemies, they are his economic enemies, and they are costing him millions. So we think, oh, it's okay. We can sin and do whatever we want to. Did you notice? Verse 14, the Lord raised up against Solomon. Verse 23, God raised up against Solomon. Two external foes that are causing problems. Notice verse 26. Also Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, rebelled against the king. He is one of Solomon's officials, an Ephraimite. And here's the account how he rebelled against the king. Solomon trusted him. Notice verse 28. He was a man of standing. When Solomon saw how well the young man did in his work, he put him in charge of the whole labor force of the house of Joseph. He is very successful. He's like, if Solomon is the CEO, he's the person who makes the CEO look good. Everything runs through him. And about that time, Jeroboam was going out of Jerusalem, and Ahiah, the prophet of Shiloh, met him on the way, wearing a new cloak. And the two of them were alone in the country. And Ahiah took hold of the cloak that he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. And he said to Jeroboam, take 10 pieces for yourself, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I am going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes. But for the sake of my servant David and the city of Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of the tribes of Israel, he will have one tribe. And I will do this because they have forsaken me and worshipped Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, and Moloch, the god of the Ammonites, and have not walked in my ways, nor done what is right in my own eyes, nor kept my statutes and laws as David, Solomon's father, did.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is Milcom the same as Moloch?
Moloch. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Did you notice who is responsible for the split of the kingdom? It's God. I'm going to take away 10 tribes. They will still belong to Israel, but no longer to the kingdom of Solomon. And I'm going to leave one tribe, actually two, because of David and Jerusalem. Notice what it says in verse 36. I will give one tribe to his son, so that David, my servant, may always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem. However, as for you, I will take you, and you will rule over all that your hearts desire, and you will rule, you be king over Israel. If you do what I command you, and walk in my ways, and do what is right in my eyes by keeping my statutes and commands, as David my servant did, I will be with you. And I will build you a dynasty as enduring as the one that I have built for David. And I will humble David's descendants because of this, but not forever. And Solomon heard about it. Verse 40. So Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam fled to Egypt, to Shishak, the king, and he stayed there until Solomon's death. As for the other events of Solomon's reign, all he did and the wisdom he displayed, are they not written in the annals of Solomon? And Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all of Israel 40 years. Then he rested with his father and was buried in the city of David, his father. And Rehoboam became, his son succeeded him as king. So, could I ask you a question? Do you think God did something in the lifetime of Solomon to discipline him? I think yes. And it cost him lots. And he tried to kill them, and he couldn't. And so sin, it never is worth it. It may look like he was so successful. Just read the last part of chapter 11. He has problems. So, Dolly, you had a question.
Yes, thanks. Who is this Jeroboam, son of Nebat? Where is he coming from? How come he has such how this important significance that God is giving him 10 tribes? Who is he?
Well, this is what we know about him. He was one of Solomon's officials. He was an Ephraimite. His mother was a widow. He was a man of standing, and he was very successful.
So just a rich guy?
Well, he wasn't necessarily rich. He was just very capable.
Okay.
And Solomon recognized that and was going to use him to help him. But then the prophet came and said, you're going to rule over 10 tribes. So did you notice in the first two, they're foreigners and God raised them up. With Jeroboam, it does not say God raised him up. God sends a prophet to him. He's an Israelite. And he's going to take over 10 tribes. So when you look at that, that is not so good, is it? We think of Solomon as this great and wonderful king. And when you look at it, he's not so great and wonderful, is he? And he's done really bad things.
When did he write the Proverbs? Was it before he backslid, or?
I think he wrote the Proverbs toward the end of his life.
So he kind of came to his senses again in the end?
I think he came to his senses.
Okay.
Now, when he came to his senses, that I don't know. He started his reign in 971. He ruled for 40 years, and he died 931. Okay. In 931, the kingdom is divided. We're going to have Judah and Israel. We call it the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. Judah is reigned by the house of David. In the north, there are, I think, 6 or 7 dynasties. None of them last very long. Basically, there is civil war for the next 200 years. The only time that they're allied is when they have a common foe. Now, before we look at chapter 12, let me ask you a question. What would you do if you were Rehoboam, Solomon's son? Would you be like Solomon and have many wives and serve gods? No. And you know what? He was just like Solomon. He was a bad king. And so we're going to look in chapter 12 at um, the breaking apart of the kingdom. So Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all the Israelites had gone there to make him king. When Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard this, he was still in Egypt, where he had fled from King Solomon. He returned from Egypt, and they sent for Jeroboam, and he and the whole assembly of Israel went to Rehoboam and said to him, "Your father put a heavy yoke on us. Now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke he put on us, and we will serve you." So you may say, I don't know exactly what that means. Let me remind you a little bit about what Solomon did. He took taxes. Who likes to pay taxes? Nobody likes to pay taxes. No hand goes up. So he took taxes. He had every tribe cook for him 1 month out of the year. And you remember he had lots of food every day. Lots of food. And the people are saying, hey, you're taking too much. We can't pay this. He had people work for him without pay. And the people are saying, it's too much. Your father put a heavy yoke on us. Now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke he put on us, and we will serve you. Okay. Do you remember when Schröder was elected Bundeskanzler? Remember that? It was a long time ago. It was before Germany was ruled by a woman, Angela Merkel. Remember that? And taxes were high. People were saying, we can't pay this. And do you know what he did? He raised Kindergeld. I'm going to raise Kindergeld. And everybody voted for him. Now, he also raised taxes a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. He invented Ökosteuer. So he put on Ökosteuer on gasoline, oil, gas, coal, wood. And people said, why did you do that? Well, I have to pay for the government. I don't want to raise taxes. We'll just add Gebühren. I wanted to write him a letter. I'll give you back the 20 euros for Kindergeld, and you give me the money back from Ökosteuer or Energiesteuer. I never did write him the letter, but it would have been a good letter. And do you see what I'm saying? If the government gives back and reduces taxes, they'll get it in another way. Now, in the US, Republican presidents say we will not raise taxes. In fact, one guy, George W. Bush, said, read my lips, no taxes. No, we will not raise taxes. And he did. And that cost him the election. So since then, Republicans have learned we do not raise taxes. Well, how do we get more money? Oh, we just have Gebühren, just fees. Now, fees are taxes too. It's just not tax. So Rehoboam says, go away for 3 days and come back to me. So the people went away. And Rehoboam consulted the elders who served his father Solomon during his lifetime. How would you advise me to answer these people? They replied, if today you wanted to be a servant for these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer, they will be your servants. They're saying, give in. Say, yes, I will reduce the taxes. Don't worry, we'll get enough money other ways. Did you notice what it says in verse 7? Today, if you will be a servant to these people, don't look at what is an advantage for you. Look what is an advantage for your people. If you do that, they will serve you forever. But Rehoboam rejected the advice the elders gave him and consulted the young men who had grown up with him and were serving him. And he asked, what is your advice? How should we answer these people who say to me, lighten the load your father put on us? The young men who had grown up with him replied, tell these people who've said to you, your father put a heavy yoke on us, but make our yoke lighter. Tell them, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Apparently, Solomon was somewhat obese. My father laid upon you a heavy yoke. I will make it heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions. You may say, well, what is that? A scorpion is a whip that has 7 to 9 streams or parts of leather. So it's just not one time that you get hit, but with one blow, you get 7 or 9 injuries. They're saying, who do you think you are, people? I am the king. You ask me to lighten the load, I will double and triple it. Just get out of here and pay me your taxes. You know, notice the older people said, just be gentle. We won't lose any money. The other people said, that's an insult that they even come to you. Did you notice they grew up with Solomon? They grew up and had all the money in the world. They were not interested in serving the people. 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to Rehoboam. As the king had said, "Come back to me in 3 days." The king answered the people harshly, rejecting the advice given him by the elders. He followed the advice of the young men and said, "My father made your yoke heavy. I will make it heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions." So the king did not listen to the people. What would you do as a people? Would you vote for him or vote for somebody else? Do you vote for Rehoboam or do you vote for Jeroboam? What do you think, Gavi?
I think Jeroboam seems the better choice.
And you don't know what he's going to do you?
No.
But you already know what Rehoboam is going to do. And you say, we don't want that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It can't get any worse with Jeroboam than it did with Rehoboam.
Mm-hmm.
And he lost 10 tribes. Now, did he lose a lot? Yes.
Yeah.
And why? Because he was stubborn. He was a fool.
And the Levites also stayed with the southern
Temple.
temple. Yeah.
The Levites and Benjamin and Judah. But Benjamin is so small that it just counts as Judah.
Mm-hmm.
There's another reason. Look at verse 15. So the king did not listen to the people, for this turn of events was from the Lord, to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through Ahijah the Shilonite. When all Israel saw that the king refused to listen to him, they answered the king, "What share do we have in David? What part in Jesse's son? To your tents, O Israel. Look after your own house, O David. We will no longer serve the house of David. You take care of your tent. We'll go home and take care of ours." So the Israelites went home. But as for the Israelites who were living in the towns of Judah, Rehoboam still ruled over them. Rehoboam said, "I'm not going to accept it." So King Rehoboam sent out Adoniram, who was in charge of forced laborers. He says, "Even though you rebel against me, you're still going to work for me." But all of Israel stoned him to death. And King Rehoboam managed to get into his chariot and escape to Jerusalem. So Israel has been in a rebellion to the house of David to this day. When all the Israelites heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent and called him to the assembly and made him king over all of Israel. Only the tribe of Judah remained loyal to the house of David. When Rehoboam arrived in Jerusalem, he mustered the whole army of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 185,000 fighting men, to make war against the house of Israel and to regain the kingdom for Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. But this word of God came to Shemaiah, the man of God. Say to Rehoboam, son of Solomon, to the whole house of Judah and Benjamin, to the rest of the people, this is what the Lord says. Do not go up to fight against your brothers. Go home, every one of you. Now notice what it says. For this is my doing. So they obeyed the word of the Lord and went home again as the Lord had ordered. You remember the question I asked at the very beginning? Is it worth sinning, enjoying the good life? Then at the end of the life, you say, sorry, God, I made a little mistake. Please forgive me. That's your job. Is it worth it? In the life of Solomon? In the life of Rehoboam? It's not worth it, is it? You lose a lot more than what you think. Solomon lost a lot, and Rehoboam's stubbornness lost him even more. And why? This is the Lord's doings. So God's plan was for two kingdoms, Judah and Israel. Southern kingdom, northern kingdom. The northern kingdom is also called Samaria. That's a later capital city. Or sometimes it's called Manasseh or Ephraim. And these are because they are the bigger tribes. In the southern kingdom, you have Judah and Benjamin. Benjamin is small, so it is called Judah. The Levites, well, they work at the temple, and the temple is supposed to be in Jerusalem. Now, you do have Levites scattered throughout the land, and they're supposed to teach the people to follow God. I'm not so sure they did. Notice the last part of chapter 12. God wants two kingdoms, one people who worship at the temple in Jerusalem. Jeroboam fortified Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and living there. And from there he went out and built up Peniel. And Jeroboam thought to himself, the kingdom will now likely revert to the house of David. If these people go up to sacrifice at the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, they will give their allegiance to their lord Rehoboam, the king of Judah, and they will kill me and return to Rehoboam. Did you see what he's saying? If they go down to worship in Jerusalem, they're going to go be the servants of Rehoboam. And then when they become servants of Rehoboam, it's good night for me. What did God promise Jeroboam? If you are obedient and you walk in my ways, I will give you a kingdom forever. You saw what I did to the house of David. Do you remember how he described that? He humbled them. And Jeroboam says, what can we do? How can we solve this problem? So, verse 28, after seeking advice, the king made 2 golden calves. He said to the people, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. And he set up one in Bethel and the other one in Dan. And this thing became a sin. The people went even as far as Dan to worship the one there. One in Bethel, 25 kilometers from Jerusalem. And the other one in Dan, up in the very northern part of the kingdom. Why go to Jerusalem and worship God there? That's a long way. Just worship him here. These gods, did you notice? They're golden calves. Have we seen a golden calf before?
I mean, you think, how stupid can you be? I mean, why didn't they think of a different type of a god? I mean,
Yeah, we've seen them before. You remember what happened to the golden calves? They got ground up. You know, there's more to it than that's going on than just the golden calves, because what he's trying to do is synchronize the religions between the Canaanites and between Israel, because Baal is portrayed as a calf or a bull. And he's saying, the Lord, the God of Israel, is the same God as the God of the Canaanites. And we're going to marry the 2 religions. We're going to have Christianity and Islam all together. We're going to have Christianity and Hinduism all together. It's all kind of the same. Notice what else he did. He built shrines on high places and appointed priests from all sorts of people, even though they were not Levites. So you remember what we talked about in Kings? The king is supposed to keep the people from worshiping at these high places, at these foreign altars. He's supposed to bring them to the place that God chooses his name to dwell. And he's saying, no, 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 just worship wherever you want to. We're not going to be so conservative and say we have to have Levites. If you want to be a priest, that's okay. I'll make you one. Everybody can do whatever they want to. He instituted a festival on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the festive held in Judah, and offered sacrifices on the altar. This is what he did in Bethel, sacrificing to the calves he had made. And at Bethel he installed priests at the high places he made. And on the 15th day of the 8th month, a month of his own choosing, he offered sacrifices on the altar he built at Bethel. And so he instituted the festival for the Israelites and went up to the altar to make offerings. Did you see the reason he does that? Look again. The kingdom will now likely revert to the house of David. If I let them go down there, they're going to kill me. So we're going to make up our own religion. It's not going to be too far off. We'll still have the God who brought us out of Egypt. We'll still have sacrifices. We'll still have festivals. It's just going to be a little different. Not too much, just a little bit. And that leads me to make one final comment. We don't have too many problems in distinguishing between Christianity and Confucianism, or being a Hindu, or being a Buddhist, right? Because the differences are very clear, right? But I have more in common with Islam than I do with even liberal Protestants. I have a lot more in common. They're against abortion. I am against abortion. They're against homosexuality. I'm against homosexuality. We have a lot more in common with them. Do you know why? Because they are a great copy. They learned from Christianity, and they are a fake religion. They pray just like we pray. They fast, we fast. They believe in Jesus, not so like we do, but they believe in Jesus. They even use the Bible. You see, they're a great fake, just like the golden calves are. It's worship God and do your part. And that is appealing and dangerous. Okay? See how it works? Satan is a master at copying the good revelation and changing it enough, but keeping a great part of it to trick people. One last thing. You know what God did for the golden calves? He ground them up. Hosea says he turned them into splinters. And then he threw the splinters in the water and they just floated away. Actually, chapter 12 seals the downfall of the nation of Israel. It just happened 210 years later. God was so patient. He gave them 210 years to give up their idols. They never did. Good. So, Dolly, you had a question.
Yes, thanks. I'm not understanding how can all these people follow Jeroboam where he's not even a king or anointed king and
He is anointed.
as a king?
Mm-hmm. Prophet came to him and said, "You're going to be the king." Now, it doesn't say, he doesn't say that he is anointed, but the prophet is the one who proclaims it.
And the people just accept this? I mean,
People
this
accepted it.
prophet is this somebody important? I mean,
Apparently, this is the only time we hear about him.
because they seem just to follow him or accept him
Hmm.
as a king, like,
Yeah,
and he's not even from
yeah,
David's family.
yeah.
It's really
But,
surprising.
oh, it's kind of like Saul, isn't it? Isn't it kind of like Saul? Chosen by God,
Mm.
anointed by him. If you obey, I will do this for you. And what is his problem? His heart. What is Rehoboam's problem? His heart. What is Solomon's problem? His heart. Yeah. So don't ask me, and I can't answer it. Did they have other candidates? Don't ask me if they had a democratic election. I have no idea. I just know what it says. Everybody looked to Jeroboam as the leader against Rehoboam, and they followed him. God chose him. The prophet anointed him. He could have had a dynasty just like the house of David, but he didn't. Okay. Um, and from now on, we're going to look at Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom. Northern Kingdom, not one king is good. Not one. Southern Kingdom, you can count them on one hand, and all of them had problems. Okay, good. So, Gabi, you had a question?
Yeah, the sin of Jeroboam, it's mentioned in the Bible
Yes.
later, I think in
Yes.
Revelation.
Hmm.
This, yeah,
Yes.
the
And
golden
this is the
calf,
sin. This is the
yeah,
sin. It's the golden
yeah,
calves. And
yeah,
sometimes it's called the calves of Bethel or Dan. Sometimes it's just called the calf of Bethel. Do you know what Hosea says about them? It's at Bethel. That means house of God, where you go worship God. And Hosea calls it Beit Avon, house of sin. Because when you go to worship God there, you're actually sinning. And I think Hosea is exactly right. They are
yeah,
sinning. They worship there.
yeah. And you said it's 25 kilometer from Jerusalem.
About 25
I
kilometers from
think
Jerusalem.
so. I think if the weather was clear, they saw Jerusalem.
Yeah, probably.
So,
Yeah, probably.
yeah,
And this is where, I don't know if you remember Gibeah in the book of Joshua. They're the Hivites. And they came
yeah,
and made a covenant with Joshua. They tricked him. And this is where Bethel is. So that's why the kingdom split. It's right where the Hivites lived. And it is the the golden calves of the northern kingdom are going to be a big problem. Now, this is what I would say. How stupid can you be? Solomon was the wisest fool who ever lived. He was stupid. Built a great temple and temple for idols. How stupid can you be? Rehoboam, how stubborn and stupid can you be? You know, he should have learned from his father, don't do this. And he was stubborn and stupid. And Jeroboam, he was afraid and stupid. Did you notice what is all common to these three? They are really stupid because they didn't believe that God would keep his promise. They can't rule over themselves. How could they rule over other people?
Mm.
And it's tragic.
Mm.
Oh, how stupid can we be? We enjoy God's blessings like Solomon and go our own way. How stupid can we be? We are stubborn and do what we want to. How stupid can we be? We're afraid of what the future will bring, and we choose not to trust God.
Mm.
See? It's not so far away from where we are.